Yeah, I think I did one summer when I was painting.
What's my name?
Hopefully it's not too controversial. I'd like to.
Ready? Huh? Yeah, I know. I'm going to have to do it since nobody volunteered. At this time, I'd like to call the December 16th County Council meeting to order. At this time, if you'll please stand with me for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the many blessings and constant mercies that you extend to us. Thank you for the opportunity and freedom we have to govern ourselves. At this time of year, I'm especially thankful for the sacrifice and love that you showed us by sending your Son to serve as a beacon of hope and love. I pray that his sacrifice would remind us all to extend love and mercy and kindness to each other. At this time, I pray for your protection over our men and women who serve in uniform. Watch over them and their families. Bless them for their sacrifice and for putting their lives on the line to serve us. I pray for those who are less fortunate, and maybe all be reminded of our duty to take care of each other, especially those who are vulnerable and in need of our help. Finally, I pray for wisdom and guidance to all of us serving in public office, that the decisions that we make would be honest, fair, and just, and most importantly, that they be in the best interest of the people that we serve. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, if the following folks would come up to the front of the podium for the oath of office. Raymond Crabb for the Hospitality Tax Advisory Committee, Scott Childers for the Board of Assessment Appeals, Steve MacArthur, the Building Board of Appeals, Doyle Roach, Building Board of Appeals, Courtney Peterson for the CVB, Caitlin Tutherow for the CVB, and Daniel Holmes for the CVB. And for the Catawba Regional Workforce Investment Board, we have Misty Burrell, Stacy Moore, Annette Killian, and Mike Dorelia. This time I would ask Harry and Weta Dest, along with BJ Bearclaw and Kevin Brackett, to please come up to the podium, and I'm going to make my way there as well. very awkward when you do these things because I feel like I need to talk here when the folks at home are listening, but it's very rare as a council for us to be able to recognize folks that have served 27 years with our county or 30 years with our county. And what we have here tonight is a little bit more special than that. We have a husband and wife duo that together have served our county for 57 years, serving in that capacity. And at this time, they're looking to retire, which I'm not sure that really means retirement. I think we've got a lot of good things to look forward to with what they're going to do in this community. But on behalf of the York County Council, I would like to present to Weta Dest and to Harry Dest. And we've got the boxes down here if you want to take those. On behalf of the York County Council, we want to thank you for the service that you've given to our county and appreciate everything that you've done. And we have some folks here that are going to say a little bit more meaningful words who have served with you to give us a little bit of information about what you've done to serve our county, and then you'll have an opportunity to speak as well.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chairman and members of council. I appreciate the opportunity to come here today and say a few words on behalf of my deputy solicitor and my friend Weta Dest. Weta and I actually have known each other. Knowing each other predates the solicitor's office. She and I were 1Ls together in law school, starting out in 1988, and we were in the same section, so we've known each other for quite some time. Weta came to work with the solicitor's office in February of 1993. And she has remained in family court where she started work with kids who are in trouble, kids who come from difficult backgrounds, kids who have gotten in trouble with the law, and throwing her shoulder to the wheel day after day to try to turn these kids around. Family court is a very unique part of the criminal justice system. Our sole mission there, or almost our sole mission, is to try to work with these kids and get them on the right path. Because at the end of the day, we want them to turn into productive citizens. And Weta came into a system that basically was just going about its business in kind of a workmanlike fashion. There was no overarching vision. There were no programs. Basically, the police would file charges, these kids would get taken to court. Since 1993, Weta has completely not just revolutionized the process of family court prosecution in York County, but the things she has done have served as a model and are imitated, which is the sincerest form of flattery, across the state. She has implemented a juvenile arbitration program, which has a 90% success rate. Kids who go through this program, 90% of them we never see in family court again. A stairs truancy program, because so much of criminal activity, so much juvenile delinquency starts with truancy. Juvenile drug court, project care for kids who haven't quite broken the law yet, but they're heading down that path and the parents don't know what to do. A juvenile PTI, a teen after school center for kids who are usually from single parent families, don't have a safe place to go after school. There's now a place in Rock Hill where a number of these kids go and they can do their homework. It's a safe place run by the Boys and Girls Club. Fantastic program. The list goes on, including implementing a docketing system that has resulted in cases being brought to court within 40 days of arrest. It's a fantastic tribute to her. I can't imagine, as I've told her many times and anybody else who will listen, the pride that she must feel at having made such a tremendous difference in so many kids' lives over 27 years. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that having somebody stay in prosecution or public defense for as long as both of these individuals have, and I feel like we've been celebrating Harry and Weta pretty much the whole month now. I'm almost tempted to make a motion to rename the month Destember instead of December, because their contributions would certainly merit it. But it is a testament to this council and every other council before you who have worked with our office under myself and Solicitor Pope before that, and Harry and his predecessors, to provide a wage that will incent people to see prosecution and public defense as a career that they can embrace and not just go into for 2 or 3 years to get the experience and then go into private practice. We provide competitive wages, and we have a number of people in both offices who are on career tracks folks who will spend their entire lives in public service, and the experience that the WIDA desks and the Harry desks bring to the courtrooms of this county have improved the quality of justice immensely, and a number of other people who are following right behind them who've been in for 15, 20, 25 years. So thank you for all you've done to make that possible. Thank you so much, WIDA, for everything you've done. Look forward to continuing to work.
I would just like to say a brief word or two. I want to echo what Solicitor Brackett has said. Because of the county and the work of Kevin Brackett and Tommy Pope before him, we were able to stay in a job and devote a career to what we love, which is juvenile justice, and that's what I decided to do from the very beginning. I wanted nothing to do with the adult court. In fact, I was thinking on the way over here, I never even saw Harry in court one day because I was always in family court, so I was never over there, and likewise, he has not seen me because we were in opposite courts. But I will say that it has been the honor of my life to work for the county, York County. I was born in Rock Hill. I was raised in the Hunter House, which was just right across the way here where my great-grandmother's home was. And it's very special for me to have worked for York County from my time coming to York in 1993, and working for Kevin Brackett has been a privilege, and I hope that I worked and made everyone proud. I will continue to do good work. I'll help the county in any way I can, and thank you all very, very much for supporting the public service that you do, and it was a very great place to work, and I will always cherish the memories here in York County. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
Madam Chairwoman, esteemed council, on behalf of Harry Dest, I'd like to say that he came to York County in 1990 and joined the Public Defender Office, and had worked his way up to the position of deputy by 1997. In 1997, there was a crisis in the Public Defender Office. Our chief public defender at the time and the chairman of this council at the time, which was Carl Gullick, were at loggerheads, and it was a time when the office almost went under, to be honest with you. I don't know if any of you remember that time, but I was here at that time too, and it was dicey times in the Public Defender Office. And Harry stepped up and became the leader of the office, and he mended ways with Chairman Gullick. And pretty much from that time to this time, I like to believe the Public Defender Office and this council has had a tremendous relationship. When Harry took over the Public Defender Office, it was a time when public defenders were paid considerably less than prosecutors. And Harry did not think that was fair, and it became his mission to try to achieve salary parity with the solicitor's office. And again, through the wisdom of this council, Harry was able to achieve that. And moving forward, Harry became the chairman of the Commission for Indigent Defense in Columbia, and in so doing, again, I would say brought a lot of honor to York County, because it was certainly York County people who were influencing the direction of indigent defense in the state of South Carolina pretty much since 2000, so almost 20 years. But Harry brought that same concept of wanting to achieve parity to the state level. And when Harry became the chairman in 2000, salary parity did not exist in a lot of counties in the state, and neither did benefits. No public defenders had any retirement in 2000, and about half of them had no health care insurance. And so Harry worked tirelessly from 2000 through 2007 until he helped create what was called the Indigent Defense Act of 2007. And what that did was it made it so that all public defenders would basically have the same, not only salary, but the same health care and retirement benefits as their counterparts in the solicitor's office. It was a remarkable achievement, and it's something that I think all public defenders, and really the quality of justice in the entire state of South Carolina, will benefit from on into the future. I think the fact that Harry, not only was the architect of writing the bill, he was one of 2 or 3 people who wrote the bill, he was also the main protagonist pushing the bill through the legislature on behalf of the commission. And I think that's a legacy for him personally, but also for this county, that can never be detracted from. On top of that, as again, many of you are probably already aware, Harry has been lead counsel on most of the high-profile cases that have come through York County in the last 25 years, 30 years. Harry has been featured on Oprah Winfrey and Larry King Live and Court TV, and the list goes on and on. But again, I say that because it's a time to honor Harry, and every great thing that Harry has done has always been a reflection back on this council. Another thing I wanted to say, again, because it reflects well on the council, is that in 2003, the United States Supreme Court, in a case called Alabama versus Shelton, said that anybody charged with any crime facing any amount of time, even 1 day in jail, is entitled to have a lawyer. And at that time, around South Carolina, public defender offices did not represent people in magistrate court or municipal court. And through Harry's leadership, but again, through the wisdom of the council, York County became one of the first, if not the first, county to fund a position to where people had representation in magistrate and municipal courts. And I can tell you, because I've been fortunate enough to be Harry's deputy from back then through now, that public defender offices all around the state try to model what they do and their relationship with their council with what Harry was able to do with this council. And now I believe that all the public defender offices in the entire state have copied what we do and have public defenders assigned to their magistrate municipal courts. Harry's entire 30-year tenure has been an amazing example of leadership, and certainly this is a well-deserved recognition time, and so thank you all.
Madam Vice Chair, members of the County Council, it's been my honor and privilege to be the Circuit Public Defender for the 16th Circuit. It's been my honor and privilege to be a part of this community. Earlier this month, I told a room of lawyers at the York County Bar that I owe everything, and I mean everything, to York County. The lawyers that mentored me, the citizens who supported me, and most importantly, this council that gave us the meaning of what it's supposed to be when we talk about zealous and meaningful representation under the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution. The right to counsel under the Sixth Amendment is meaningless unless we have the proper resources, unless we have the proper training, the proper investigation, the attorneys who are skilled to handle cases in criminal court. What I have been able to do really is just an extension of the opportunity that you gave me so many years ago, that this body gave me. The vision of having parity with solicitors, the vision of having a public defender system where we're on equal footing with the rest of the system, is something that's just aspirational for most states. But not here. Not here, not because of me, but because of you and your predecessors. You can take great pride in that. You know, I think back when I first came to York County 30 years ago, and I think about what it was like walking into the public defender office across the street in the old, now new, renovated courthouse. There were just 2 public defenders and a secretary in thousands of cases. There were no computers, no cell phones, no emails. It was just 2 lawyers and a secretary. But we have transformed not only the system here, but statewide. There's not enough words that I can say that really adequately express my gratitude to all of you. It has been the honor of my life to be a servant for the poor here in York County. You have given me more opportunities than I could ever dream when I was a young lawyer. And I'll always, always in my heart be a public defender, and always in my heart have great, great gratitude to this body, because you transformed the system. And I was just an agent of that change. Thank you.
Thank you, BJ, and thank you, Kevin, for your words, and I especially thank the Dests for their service to our community, and we wish you certainly the best as your career takes a new path, and we know that we'll see more of you. Thank you again for your service. At this time, I'd like to recognize Cumming to come provide a construction report update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of Council, good evening. I'm pleased to be here this evening to present the quarterly building program update. If you would, please turn to tab section 1, and we'll begin with the Moss Justice Center. While I was sitting there, I was thinking, this was actually the first project we bid, and we knew it was it's probably one of the most complicated projects that I've ever been involved with, but started adding up the days. That project has been ongoing for almost 1,100 days. That's 4 phases, very complicated, and we're nearing the end. Right now we're concentrating on 3 separate areas. The judicial renovation, we should be complete or ready for inspection by the end of the year. The sheriff's renovation, same, and then the front entrance. That will be the last piece, but it also should be complete by end of year. Occupancy will begin the first week in January. We're actually moving furniture. That's beginning this week. I've got several photos that I'd like to share. The first is the front entrance. It's changed a good bit. If you recall, at one point it had this covered canopy that kind of went all the way around in front of the sheriff's area is now gone. This is the main secure entrance. You've got some exit only. This is a controlled point. We've got some elevated grade so that we can't drive a vehicle through it, or it's some passive security items that blend in. This will be sodded the front with your flagpoles. Second photograph is just kind of the back of house and kind of show you everything that was been complete new. This is the new sheriff's component, new parking, of course the parking deck, and then this is the judicial component that was built new. And this is just a kind of a close-up of the front entrance. This area right here is actually a ADA access ramp, and then you have stairs. And this is a photo of an existing courtroom that's being renovated. And everything's being renovated and new except for some of the existing judge's desk, and that was refinished to match everything else. Any questions with Moss Justice? Our second project is Family Court, and I want to talk about it in 2 components. First is the interior. If you've been in it, it's very close to being complete. We are actually testing out all the life safety and security items, and also doing punch list inspections. So the interior of the building is near completion. The exterior, unfortunately, we've had issues, the contractors had issues with the GFRC, which is the cornice material that this white stuff that goes around the building. The subcontractor is out of Texas, and the general contractor has had multiple issues getting the material on site. We've been told one thing, and it's actually not very accurate. Long story is that we cannot have a CO inspection until the elevations are complete. And one thing, right now, all the material is on site, and it is scheduled to be complete approximately mid-January. Then we'll have a little bit of landscaping to do ahead of that, and we can have their CO inspection.
Everything from Texas is here.
Well, we asked that question this week. The material, the bill of lading says everything's there. They've told us that everything has been inventoried. My gut tells me there'll be a piece or 2 that's been damaged that'll have to be addressed, patched, or replaced. But those items will, we can install and it can be corrected or replaced. It will not keep us from getting our final CO, which, again, I'm a little hesitant I'm not I'm a little hesitant to commit to you that everything's there. I'm committing to you that that's what we've been told. And short of inventorying every item, we feel that everything's there. So now, we've met with the city of Rock Hill, and they have allowed us to go ahead and start moving furniture. That's actually started today. And they've actually gone and said they would allow us to occupy the facility without having 100% of the cornice installed. But they would require, and I agree, that 100% of the front and the portico would have to be complete. Back of the house, if we miss, that's where it needs to be missed. But my preference would be to complete the entire project and turn it over as it should be, and that is 100% complete. But we are still working. We're trying to, it's a little bit of a cause and effect, because without being able to move into this facility, we can't finish building 2. We actually can't even start building 2 of the Heckle component. And I'll talk about that now. If there's any other questions with the family court, I'll address them now. With and our last project is the renovations to Heckle. There's 3 buildings involved. Building 3 is the one that's most complete. It has probation and parole. It's got DHEC. There was a addition to that project here recently, but we're approximately about 33% complete. It should be 100% complete with that building in about 30 days. So mid-January, that building should be complete and available for occupancy. Building 1 is the next one. We got some early access to that, and we should be finished about 50% of that this year. The balance of Building 1 can't be started until we get, until the family court is occupied. And then Building 2, 100% cannot be occupied until we move the court system into the new family court. Having said that, those damages that may be caused are on our contractor from family court are on the hook. They've been put on notice twice, and have been notified that they will be responsible for any and all damages caused by their delay. I neglected to go through all the photos. This is a front elevation. This front portico, part of this has to be complete to actually finish the roofing. It's a fairly complicated system, but it's a very good product. This is the front entrance. This is a courtroom with the technology been installed. So this is kind of typical of what you'll see on the inside. This is the monument staircase, which is to the right of the front lobby, on the right of the lobby. This is a picture of the Heckle. In addition, the roof on all 3 buildings are being replaced, and that's in progress now. This is a lobby, some Veterans Affairs. That's and then this is a part of Building 3, the WIC, Women and Infant Children. That was a recent addition to the scope. So that's kind of the summary of Heckle. If any questions there, I'll be more than happy to try to answer them.
I should have asked you earlier, sorry, just popped in my head.
Yes, sir.
At the, was that the magistrate's office in Moss Justice we looked at? Where they had the little wooden partition at the bottom, and made mention they needed to do something a little bit nicer to not look like they had to.
When you and I toured the facility?
Right. Remember that little wooden partition? They said somebody with county made it for them or something to.
Oh, okay. So, so part of similar to this. So at Moss Justice, the silver thing is called a deal tray. At Moss Justice, this transaction window has a gap about 3 inches from the bottom. It's actually looks like a square right there. And someone from the county has made some wooden
Partitions.
3 inches by 18 inches to kind of fill that gap. There's no plans, there's nothing on the construction documents to address that. Certainly we can get something made up if that's your wish. But
Yeah, I mean, it looked like something they picked up at the hardware. I mean,
Understand.
It didn't even look that nice. It looked like something they stopped by the junkyard and said, here's a scrap of wood, I'll just stick this up here.
My understanding, the reason why they did that was, it was a draft.
Yeah, that's the main concern they had.
But certainly we can have.
I mean, they
something.
just need to have something. I mean, it won't cost hardly anything, and have county residents going through there. It needs to look a little nicer than that.
We can certainly do that. Tab section 2 is, we always include a financial update. I just want to discuss this real briefly and answer any questions you may have. Currently, as it sits now, we're about $50,000 under budget of the overall development budget. Now, we've got some projections. Second page shows some projections of some additional unrequested items and some kind of fit and finish items that would be scope creeps or whatnot. And we're projecting that that's going to be, we think worst case. I think it's under this number, but what we're projecting. But the key is that although we're projecting over the development budget, we would be under the bond funds. And Mr. Madden can probably just discuss that a little better than I can.
Okay. When we borrowed that money, we just didn't sit on it. That money was invested. And the proceeds of the money that's been invested can be used to fund the bond projects. If y'all remember back, there was also $5 million and then $1.6 million from the general fund transferred over these bond projects. When we're completed with the bond projects, there will be a surplus, and it will be unrestricted. While the interest income is restricted because that money was transferred from the general fund, we always spend our restricted funds first. We're going to be able to finish in the black on all the bond projects and have some additional money, and it's still to be determined. That will be up to council's discretion as to what they do with that. So financially, overall, these projects, particularly when you get the scope of the projects we've done, the variety across the county to come in as close as everything's looking like it's coming into budget is very commendable. Very commendable.
Mr. Roddy?
So if we subtract the interest or the investment part of the bonds, where would we come in with the projects without those funds?
Overall, it would come in slightly over budget. Again, that number's to be determined. The largest single driver of this, and y'all have all heard this before, was the $1 million data center we put in the government center building. That was unexpected, a last-minute change. That's been the biggest single driver of any of the budget variances that we've experienced. And there's been positive variances, there's been negative variances. Just as with our annual budget, I do not mind budget variances as long as we understand what's going on with that. And, you know, coming and everybody we worked with has done a very good job of explaining those variances, at least to my knowledge, or at least what I would needed to hear, and I think what Andy needed to hear as well. So again, if we're going to probably come in, if I had to guess, and I'm guessed on this, and I always guess a little high, we might be $1 million to maybe as much as possibly $2 million over those original budget numbers. However, we're going to still finish in the black from a cash standpoint. There will be no additional transfer needed from the general fund anywhere else, and we should finish with some money in that fund when it's said and done that y'all can decide what you want to do with afterwards.
Thank you, Kevin. Any other questions from council? I do know that there was a list of items that I believe I'll refer to them as punch list items, although I think that the folks that brought these to the attention of the council consider them more than a punch list item. From the sheriff and from the folks at the court administration, have all of those items been resolved?
I can't say specifically. I'm not sure referring to what list you're discussing, but any item that would be I guess as a broad statement, anything that would be deficient construction is going to be addressed. Anything that is, if it hasn't already, anything that is been damaged during construction will be addressed. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
I think what we could do is just make sure that the list is recirculated and make sure that there's not any remaining issues that exist. But I know that the council is pleased to learn that we're going to be moving into the building within the budget funds that were budgeted, and we're not going to need to go into the general fund beyond that. But I will make sure that that list is circulated and that we have a clear answer on that before we get the CO.
absolutely.
Yeah, and we kind of had the list with me when we went through the building, and I kind of mentioned to you the bigger concerns, like the carpet in that area we talked about, and some other things I won't rehash.
Any other?
I remember some things circulating a while back, maybe they weren't punch list items. I think some people wanted some upgrades, or they thought something should have been a little step up. Maybe, is that the punch list you're thinking of?
Some of them were items that needed to be completed, and there was miscommunication about what was and was not included. I think that's the list that the council's working from, is to make sure that we don't have anything remaining from that.
And I'll go back, I'll commit that anything that's deficient construction will be addressed. Anything that's damage or a punch list item would be addressed. Now, there, as part of that section 2 on the second page, there is a list of items that have been requested, and that might be what you're referring. And those are items that we are, pending budget, we're pursuing to procure and install.
Okay.
What'd you decide on the elevation of the parking deck?
Currently, we've
Shrubbery?
not been, told to move forward with any type of cladding. Which the cladding, the brick cladding was during design development, that project was about $2 million over budget. We recommended,
Right.
That was one of the items that was recommended to remove. It can be added back anytime, but it was.
Well, I think you had a good suggestion. I mean, there's
It can be addressed in many different ways.
Yeah. Shrubbery or
From shrubbery to.
just on the front,
To
not the whole
cladding
thing.
it with thin brick.
David, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, I can say that all the items, we sent out a email about a month ago, something like that, and had confirmed with the elected officials that most of the items that had been discussed, with the exception of a couple that they understood we did not support funding at this time, all of those had been resolved. We can revisit that list just to make sure we are all in agreement on that. And again, there are a couple of things from a scope standpoint that could be approved by council that we have to date not approved, but I think the necessary items have been approved.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. At this time, we'll have the auditors with Green Finney to present the annual audit.
Good evening. I'm Emily Sobczak. I'm with Green Finney. I'm the partner of the financial statement audit. And we, in the past, have typically presented the financial audit results in January. However, this year, in the interest of providing you the information as timely as possible, I'm here this evening, happy to be here. But because we are here a little bit earlier this year, the financial report that you have in front of you is still in draft form. It's in the quality review process, and so we expect to have the final reports certainly by the end of December, and hopefully by the end of this week, and you'll be receiving the final bound copies once those are ready. We don't anticipate any further revisions to the numbers, so we expect that the numbers and the disclosures are correct as they stand. And so that's what I'll be presenting on this evening. I do like to start by reminding you that the bulk of the information provided in that financial report does come from the county. The report itself is the county's responsibility, and that is really what your finance department is working on day in, day out throughout the year, working to ensure that the financial information that they're providing, not only at year end for audit purposes, but also throughout the year, the information that they are providing to you to help you make the best strategic decisions for the county, to make sure that information is complete, accurate, and reliable. And part of what is required in order for that information to be reliable is to have good policies and procedures in place. Having good internal controls in place allows you to rely on the information that's being produced. And so we do recommend that you at least annually review your policies and procedures to make sure that they are best addressing the risks that the county is facing. So then our responsibility as your auditor is to audit the financial information provided and issue an opinion based on that audit. We do anticipate issuing an unmodified opinion again this year. Remember, that is a clean opinion. That's the opinion that you want to receive. And that opinion provides reasonable assurance that the financial statements are materially correct. So it is important to note that a financial statement audit does not involve us looking at every single transaction that occurred during the year. We do use some professional judgment in determining what we review during the audit process to provide that reasonable assurance. So let's look at your financial results for fiscal 19. Your general fund had a decrease in fund balance of $23.1 million, bringing fund balance to $66.5 million. But as we'll talk about in a few minutes, The primary driver of that decrease was the establishment of the Debt Service Reserve Fund. So the general fund made a significant transfer over to the Debt Service Reserve Fund, and absent that transfer, you actually had an increase in your fund balance. So when we look at fund balance, we have several different classifications. We have what's referred to as non-spendable fund balance. This is $2.1 million related to assets held for sale. So those assets are not in liquid spendable form. You also have restricted fund balance of $4.8 million. These are amounts that have external restrictions, and those are primarily for road improvements. You also have committed fund balance, which represents amounts that are designated internally by council of $21.5 million for a variety of different projects. So when we take out those amounts that are already designated for specific purposes, we're left with unassigned fund balance of $38.1 million. We like to compare your unassigned fund balance to your operating expenditures to give you an idea of how healthy your fund balance is as of June 30th. And so your unassigned fund balance of $38.1 million represents 32% of your budgeted fiscal 20 expenditures. So you've got about 4 months of expenditures in your unassigned fund balance. And that does comply with the county's minimum fund balance policy, which is to maintain at least 25% of your budgeted expenditures. There are a number of different reasons why it is so important to have that healthy fund balance. And one of those is for cash flow purposes, because property taxes, your most significant revenue sources, those don't typically come in until January. And so when we're measuring your fund balance as of June 30th, you have 6 months of cash flows to get through. And having a healthy fund balance allows you to do that without having to issue short-term debt. It also allows you to be better prepared for any unanticipated expenditures or significant emergencies. And we do always caution against using fund balance for recurring expenditures. It should only be used for non-recurring planned items, such as capital items. So looking at your general fund activity for the year, you had revenues of $114.1 million. That was a 9% or $9.2 million increase from the prior year. And that increase was primarily driven by property taxes related to the millage rate increase that went into effect for fiscal 19, as well as investment income. The local government investment pool, which the county participates in, had an excellent year when it comes to investment returns. And so the county did see some really good returns from that, but of course investment returns can't be depended on to maintain at the same level. And so you had a great year there, but may not be a recurring high revenue source for you. I do also like to note that when looking at your revenues, while you did see some significant increases in property taxes and investment income, you also saw some decreases in several areas, including the licenses, fines, and permits, which decreased about $1.3 million compared to the prior year. When looking at revenues compared to budget, you were about 10% better than budget. And again, that's primarily related to the property taxes and investment income. Looking next at the expenditures, you had expenditures of $98.9 million for fiscal 19. That was an increase from the prior year of about 9%. And that increase, as we might expect, was primarily driven by personnel costs. You saw a $5.1 million increase in your personnel costs, which, you know, of course, the bulk of your expenditures are in personnel. And so it is important to consider when you're making changes to your personnel, when you're adding new positions, which I know for fiscal 20, you have plans to add a significant number of new positions. It is very important that you consider the long-term cost of those additional positions, salaries, as well as the fringe benefits that are associated with those. And in just a few minutes, we'll talk a little bit more about the impact of the fringe benefit side of that. And so when looking at your expenditures compared to your budget, you're about 5% below budget. You did a great job this year of preparing a reasonably conservative budget that was realistic and accurate, and also trimmed the cost down as much as possible. And so you see that with how your actual came out compared to your budget. So next we look at all of your governmental funds combined. So when we combine your general fund along with your special revenue funds, capital projects funds, and debt service funds, you're looking at total revenues and net other financing sources of $253 million, compared to expenditures of about $259 million. The difference there, of course, is related to capital outlay, spending down of prior year's bond proceeds. So many of those significant capital projects that you have ongoing that we just heard the great update on are funded through GO bonds that were issued in prior years. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, you do have the one new fund this year, the Debt Service Reserve Fund, that the general fund made a significant transfer over to set funds aside for future debt service retirement. Next, we look at your enterprise funds. Remember, the difference here with your enterprise funds is that whereas on your governmental funds, we're focusing on the current assets and liabilities, when we report your enterprise funds, they also report long-term assets and liabilities. And so for that reason, we refer to their equity as net position rather than fund balance. So the Water and Sewer Fund had an increase in net position of $10.6 million from the prior year, and that was primarily due to higher revenues driven by increased rates. And on the expense side, you had expenses that were very consistent with the prior year. So we're looking at net position of $151 million. The bulk of that is, of course, invested in capital assets. And when we look at your utility funds, we always encourage you to monitor the rates, to monitor the capital needs of the fund. And I know that that is something that y'all are very aware of, and that y'all have had a capital plan put in place that includes a rate study. And that you've been monitoring your expenditures compared to that plan and have plans to adjust rates accordingly. So I applaud you for really staying in tune with the needs of those utilities. On the Solid Waste Disposal Fund, you had an increase in net position of about $300,000, but that was primarily, or really entirely driven by investment returns. This fund actually had an operating loss during the year of about $30,000. And so again, I know that you have that you've scheduled rate increases to address those operating needs of the fund. So when we talk about the full accrual financial statements, we have, in addition to the traditional capital assets and long-term debt, we also, as we've talked about the past few years, report a net pension liability related to your participation in the state retirement system. Now, the liability that we're reporting, it is significant. It's $107 million as of June 30th. However, it is an actuarial liability, which means it is an estimate, and it's a liability that you have no control over. It's your allocated piece of the state retirement system's unfunded actuarial liability. And so what's important for you to focus on is not that big number, but on the contribution rates. The employer contribution rates, as we've talked about in prior years, have been increasing. They've been increasing for several years now, and the state has established a plan in place to continue to increase those rates by 1% annually through fiscal 2023. And so what that means is that for fiscal 19, you were paying rates of 14.5% and 17.2% for the South Carolina retirement system and the police officers retirement system, respectively. Those rates each increased for fiscal 20 to 15.5% and 18.2%, and they will continue to increase through fiscal 2023 when we'll be looking at rates of 18.5% and 21.2%. So as you can see, those are significant increases that are going to have a direct impact on your operating budget. And again, with a governmental entity, you are looking at the majority of your expenditures being in personnel costs. And so when you're seeing those significant increases, it will become more and more difficult to identify funding sources to cover those increases. And so I encourage you that when you're going through the budget process, be sure that you're looking beyond the one-year budget and considering what these impacts are going to have on future years so that you can plan as best you can and be prepared for those impacts. A similar liability that we are reporting on your full accrual statements is the net OPEB liability. This is related to your retiree healthcare plan. And while it is calculated in a similar manner to the net pension liability, it is an actuarial liability. This one differs in that the county has its own retiree healthcare plan. And so that means that county council has full control over the terms, the benefits, and the contribution rates for the plan. And so as of June 30th, you're looking at a liability of $31.1 million. The county's obligation is to pay the benefits promised by the plan. And the county is going a step beyond that in putting additional funds aside for future benefits. And so currently you're doing exactly what you need to be doing to address this liability. We'll talk just a little bit about your other more traditional long-term assets and obligations. You had total capital assets of $387 million at June 30th. You know, as we heard about, you had significant projects ongoing at year-end that you had about $75 million in construction commitments related to those projects as of June 30th. And we do note here that your financials do include those rural fire districts, and the assets of those districts are the county's assets. So those are included in the county's capital assets that we're reporting here. On the other side, the long-term obligations, you have long-term debt outstanding of $156.9 million as of June 30th. That includes the 2 new issuances of GO bonds that you did during fiscal 19, that totaled about $30 million in new bonds. And so you're looking at debt service payments for fiscal 2020 of about $23.5 million, including both your principal and your interest payments. We like to keep you aware of new accounting standards that are going to be coming down the line in upcoming years. There are 2 statements that we've included here, GASB number 84, which talks about fiduciary activities, and GASB number 87, which covers leases. Neither of these standards is expected to have a significant impact on the county, and so I'm not going to get into the details, but I will be happy to discuss them at length if you'd like to at a later time. So in addition to the audit opinion that's included in the front of your report, you also have 2 additional reports in the back of your report. These are the compliance reports. The first discusses our responsibilities in performing an audit in accordance with government auditing standards. And the second covers the additional compliance audit that we performed that's referred to as the single audit. And that one is where we focus on your federal expenditures. And we did audit the child support program again this year, and I'm pleased to say that we have no findings related to that single audit, nor do we have any findings, no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses related to the financial statement audit. So that's something that you should be very proud of, and that is a direct reflection on Mr. Madden and all of his staff, the finance department as a whole. They work very hard throughout the year to make sure that they're doing things the right way and that they're providing good, accurate, and reliable financial information. In addition to the CAFR, we also issue a management letter each year, and that includes some required communications from us to management and to council. And that is another area where we may from time to time have some significant recommendations that we make, areas for improvement. But again, I'm pleased to say that there was nothing that rose to that level this year. So again, thank you to your finance department. I know that y'all appreciate them like we do, and great job maintaining good financial condition for the county, as has been reflected in that AAA credit rating. Again, something y'all should be very proud of. Not many governments get to claim an award like that. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Well, it's always nice to hear that we're coming under budget, that we have healthy reserves, and that we have a good credit rating. I'm very thankful to our staff for the hard work that they put into that to make sure that we do what we need to do to be able to serve the community with the best rates possible. Are there any questions from council? Mr. Blackman? Blackwell? Dr. Blackwell?
Change your name at Christmas.
Is that
I've been called worse. But just curious, do y'all have a standard for unrestricted fund balances as far as percentage-wise? Do y'all have a golden rule?
Well, that's kind of a not one-size-fits-all category. So the benchmark that's provided by the Government Finance Officers Association, which is a national organization, they say you should have at least 2 months of operating expenditures, which would be about 17%. Depending on your unique circumstances, there are a number of reasons why it's important to maintain a higher balance than that. But like I said, it really depends on the entity and what your fund balance policy looks like as a whole. So, but I think from our perspective, y'all are in great shape.
Okay.
I have a question. It's always refreshing here that we're one of very few to have entitled AAA rating. I think we're the only ones in York County that can hold that certificate high and proud. This is kind of to piggyback off of what Dr. Blackwell was mentioning about the unrestricted fund balance. You know, he mentioned what's a good level. What's our percentage? Maybe I missed it when you was going through
Yep,
it.
so your unassigned fund balance is about 32% of your fiscal 20 operating expenditures, budgeted operating expenditures.
Now, if that percentage goes down, what would be the warning level? You know, if we was at 5%, you know, would that set off any concern for someone like yourself or your firm? Say, wait a minute, this is a little bit too low. You're at 5%, and we know, you know, the only revenue that we basically bring in is for taxes. You know, and if we're in September, October, and we're running thin, and our next big payday is not until October to December, you know, that should be, is that not a red flag if we were to?
Absolutely, and I would say that it would also depend on the circumstances. I mean, if your fund balance went down to 5%, yes, I would say that's much too low. If it decreased slightly due to planned, strategic, you know, non-recurring expenditures that council, you know, agreed was for the best of the county, that may not be as concerning. But certainly, if your fund balance fell to the level that it was causing problems in cash flows, or you were dipping into fund balance to cover recurring expenditures, to cover additional personnel costs, that would certainly be cause for concern.
Any other questions?
Oh, I have one more question.
Okay.
The management letter, did you guys issue a management letter with ours, or is that required when you do an audit? Is that part of the standard to require a management letter?
Yes, there are required communications. Different firms present that in different ways. Our policy is to do that through a formally documented management letter, and so we do issue that every year. Like I said, that's largely the required standard communications, and this year, no additional comments included in that report. No significant.
If we had any issues with what you guys found, that would be in that management's letter?
Yes, they would either be in the management letter, or if they rose to a higher level, they would be included as written findings in your CAFR report in that compliance section. Yeah.
I was a little surprised by the amount of our non-tax revenue, the fees and permits and fines. How was that in relation to other counties as regarding like the percentage of our total revenue, or those ratios? Are those typical?
That's a good question, and I can't speak specifically to that, but I would say I'm not surprised by those ratios. I think that they look, you know, in a fair range compared to similar counties.
Guess that means we can keep Kevin around till Christmas or something.
Thank you. It appears that we are still with the measures that we have in place to pay off our GO debt by 2024 without having to take any additional measures. Is that right?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yep. And so, and that's, you know, when you're in a good financial position, those are the decisions that you should be looking at, is how to best use those funds for the future. And so, again, it's great to see that y'all are making those kinds of decisions and thinking long term.
Thank you. And as I understand it, our AAA tax rating also helps the municipalities that are within us, helping them with their tax rate as well.
Sure does.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just to clarify one thing, the GO debt, when we issued last year the money to buy the Riverbend property as well as the park at in Lake Wiley, we took a double barrel approach with that. The Riverbend property is going to pay with hospitality tax, and the special tax district is going to pay the debt for the park up there. We did a double barrel approach, so it's also falls under GO debt, even though we're not going to use GO debt to pay for that, and the debt service millage will go away. That is why that technically still falls under the GO debt category. We did that to get the best rates when we issued that debt. The investment returns, just to touch on that a bit, when I got at the county in 2016, we were getting 0.2% from local investment pool. Last year, we averaged about 2.5%. So, you know, over 10% increase on a return on, that we're getting on a return on investment, very significant. That will not continue. That's the number that's going to drop going forward. That's it.
Thank you. Anything else? We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we move into the public forum session. It appears that there's only one individual who signed up for that, Steve Hamilton. As you make your way to the podium, we just ask that you state your name and address for the record, and remember that we have a 2-minute time frame on that, but we don't have any others, so if you need to go over a little bit, we'll be all right.
Okay, very good. My name is Steve Hamilton. I'm Executive Director of Nation Ford Land Trust. My home address is 7094 Captain's Court in TK. I'd like to speak this evening and address your agenda item number 19, which is going to be the survey work for the new Stuck Conservation Easement. To date, the Stuck family has placed 3 conservation easements for a total of 1,100 acres here in York County. The York County Forever Commission and this council has participated in all of those. So there was a 2006, a 2007, and a 2019 easement for that total. I would also state that I'm also an ex officio member of the York County Forever Commission. This 4th easement that's on your slate for this evening, I'm sorry, Madam Vice Chairman, I didn't recognize you in the council, so thank you for having me here today too. This 4th easement will place in a conservation easement approximately 2,800 acres. This will be the largest conservation easement in the county, surpassing Worth Mountain and the End Springs Close Greenway, and it may be the largest easement in 2020 in the state of South Carolina. The county's investment for the survey will be approximately $50 an acre. To put things in perspective, last December, this council spent $11,000 per acre on the 1,900-acre Riverbend project, which I think was a historic and monumental decision that this council made, and I applaud all of you for that. If you combine the Stuck property together with the recently acquired Riverbend project, this will mean that this council will have provided funding to save and protect in perpetuity over 4,500 acres in York County, all of that done within 18 months. That would be a remarkable achievement for this council to do. So as you move forward with the meeting, I urge you and appeal to you to support this initiative, and I think it would benefit all of us here in York County. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
If there are any questions on that, I can maybe help you with that too. So.
We appreciate it. At this time, do I have a motion for consent agenda? We have a motion to approve and a second to approve consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. If we move to the first public hearing, number 1, council to hold a public hearing and approve 3rd reading of an ordinance to amend the existing agreement governing the York-Chester Industrial Park to add parcels within the geographical boundaries of York County to the multi-county park, to revise tax map numbers, company names, or property owners associated with certain parcels, to remove parcels from the park, to provide for a public hearing, and to provide for other matters relating thereto. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor? All those in favor of closing, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Do I have a new motion?
Move to approve 3rd reading.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes unanimously. Number 2, council to hold a public hearing and consider 3rd reading of an ordinance to suspend the scheduled 2020 to 2026 water rate and sewer rate increases and to amend the code of the County of York, South Carolina, Chapter 51.05, water and sewer rates and charges, terms and conditions of service, sections B2 and B10, in order to apply the 2019 approved rates prospectively and to provide for other matters relating thereto. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition? Anyone here who wishes to speak in favor?
Move to close.
All those in favor to closing public hearing say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Do I have another motion?
Move to approve.
All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Moving to old business, council to discuss purchase of the fireboat for Newport Fire District. Dr. Blackwell.
But anyway, as everybody knows, they've gotten acquired a used fireboat, so I would like to defer this item. I brought it forward just because of the procedural mechanics we have to go through. But just to defer this for the next 6 to 12 months to give Chief Falk time to see the usage of the older fireboat and how well they can use it. And I guess also let the motion show if they should have the good fortune to receive a state grant for a new fireboat, they can proceed and move forward. That's my motion.
So we're deferring?
Yeah, because there's,
Need a second?
yeah,
Do we actually need a formal motion to come out of this to comply with procedure, or is this sufficient just to?
well, it was an action
It looks
item.
like it's discussion.
It was referred for action to this meeting.
A vote can't hurt.
Okay. So
I need a
here,
second.
I'll second.
any other discussion?
I just have a question. Normally, if we spend that amount of money, even in a special tax district, I thought it was something that came before council and council approved. So I was kind of surprised to read that they had bought the fireboat,
They've already bought it?
the
I
used
thought
one.
this was coming back.
Maybe we need, maybe it'd be good to have some staff input here if you guys don't mind. Kevin, David?
This boat was not bought with special tax district money. Very similar to, Leslie purchased actually a small boat. I'm not sure what, that four-wheeled vehicle to service Riverbend that was bought not from their special tax district money as well.
Okay.
A lot of our stations out there have other sources of revenue, and they had accumulated funds from that source of revenue, and that's why it did not come before y'all.
Okay.
All right, I think the motion on the table is to defer discussion on this until after there's been an opportunity for them to decide whether or not it needs to come before council again. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I just want to know how much was the boat?
10,000. It's all Lexington County was wanting it. And they
So what about the place to keep the boat and the maintenance of the boat and those things? I mean, I'd just like to know a little bit more about it, and at what point a fire department can just make a purchase without coming before council. I'd like to know what that number is.
I think the cost of the boat, and I wasn't there, I haven't seen the numbers. I think the last quote it was is somewhere in the 28 to 31 range. I could be off on that, but that was the last number I heard.
For what?
For the boat, the cost, 28,000 to 31,000. I think that's the last I heard.
No, they paid 10,000. That's what Carl told me.
Okay.
Well, I guess at this point, what we have, and I guess we could have some input from staff, and maybe it needs to go through Justice and Public Safety to get some more information and go through budget control. But I think the motion currently before the council is whether or not to discuss the purchase, and at this stage, they're not looking to do that through county regulated funds, as I understand that. So unless I hear some objection otherwise, I think the motion was to defer discussion on this. If there's anyone on staff who needs to pipe in and say something, I think your time to do that is now.
I can just address Councilwoman Love's question. I mean, we did have a discussion with Newport regarding the cost of upkeep and maintenance and all those types of things that would be in addition to the purchase. And that was something we deemed to be within their ability to do so in their budget. The discussion about the larger boat and what we wanted to see a operational budget and going forward for a number of years. But we did meet with them on the proposed budget, the boat they were wanting to purchase now, and felt like that was something that would fall within their ability to budget. So we did have those discussions. My understanding the boat was going to be more than $10,000, but he may have negotiated that down. So,
Mr. Roddy?
Well, I feel like we're kind of getting into the discussion part, but I thought there was going to be some type of study and it was going to come back and do all this, but I guess if you find ways to maneuver around our policy, then what good is having a policy? Because this sounds like this kind of circumvented what we were expecting to happen to come back to us about the boat. Obviously, I was one of the ones that kind of gave the go-ahead to take this step. And now to hear that a boat has been purchased, and we have, the only person I guess had knowledge of it was Dr. Blackwell. So to me, you know, if they're gonna,
Thank you for getting my name correct.
if they're gonna kind of circumvent the rules, then, you know, I still don't think this lets them off the hook, because there's still more expenses to come with owning this boat. There's still questions as to where it's gonna be housed, who's gonna have access to it, who's gonna control it during certain time periods. And I thought that was kind of gonna be worked out before the boat was purchased. You talk about putting the cart before the horse on several different things that we've seen happen. This is definitely one of them, unless I'm totally missing the boat on something.
I think it was 2 counties around Columbia, Richland, Lexington County, I forgot which ones, but formed an MOU. One could do something better than the other, and the other one could help with already had a fireboat or whatever, and the county that didn't need it anymore just kind of put it out there, and this is, I guess, in the past 2 months or so, and they were just essentially selling at a very low price. So with the and I don't want to speak for Chief Falk, but with the minimal cost, they wanted to go ahead and get it to try a fireboat just to see how it would work out. So they would have some data and stuff to give us, you know, using it on the lake, and see how it would go. And that's why I'm deferring it, just so I mean, it's not a modern fireboat, but it's at least gives them an opportunity to kind of experience the situation and get back to us to let us know all the particulars and how well it's used, things like that. Emergencies or fire or whatever.
Kevin, is there anything you need to add?
I just want to reiterate what Mr. Husband said. You know, I did sit down with Tommy Carroll and Chief Falk and went through 2 scenarios, their budget with a new boat and their budget with this used boat. The budget with the used boat is definitely within their means and would not require a millage increase. You know, and what Dr. Blackwell just said, the discussion Chief Falk had was basically making sure he can further justify to the council the need for a new boat. This is a used boat. They don't have an expectation of using this used boat forever, but it was really an opportunity to get something very inexpensive that they could then come back to council and justify the need for a new boat. I believe the long-term plans still are for a new boat. He felt like this would give the district additional ammunition and support, so everybody understands the need for a boat. But again, I just really want to reiterate, this was not done without considering the expenses and ramification to their budget.
And I believe they got a place to dock it at no charge, but I don't know that for a fact.
If there's I think what this council is relying upon is our staff to put this before us as a budgeting consideration, if that's something that we need to do. My recollection of this issue is that in order to meet our own set deadlines, that we needed to at least have a discussion about this before year end in order to move forward. So as I view it, what we have before the council is simply a motion to defer discussion of the purchase of the item that's required, if that's to happen, that requires county approval. And if there's no other discussion, those in favor of deferral of this item, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No. Aye. I'd just like to know when we were deferring it until.
Well, I think that's a
I
good.
said 6 to 12 months, just to give them a little window.
So we're gonna defer I'd just like to get some answers to some questions. I don't wanna wait a year to know what the boat cost, and I'm just curious about it. Because I feel like the last thing that we said to them was, you know, come back with some information, and I don't think anywhere in what we discussed was to go out and purchase a boat as a trial run and then come back a year later. We asked that they come back in December with some information.
Well, I do think there's a good point in making sure that we are made fully aware of what the considerations are that council needs to consider. And so perhaps at the next council meeting, we'll go ahead and have an update from staff as to where we are on that situation, since we were expecting a recommendation from staff before December. So we'll make sure to put that on the next council agenda item, just to make sure we've clarified that. The first item under new business,
May I just add one last thing to that? And here again, nobody imagined they'd have an opportunity like this. It just popped up, and they tried to take advantage of it.
First item in new business, council to approve a resolution approving and ratifying the transfer and assignment to Alpha Z Charlotte Industrial One LLC, Alpha Z of 1, all of the rights, interests, and obligations of Crescent Lakemont II LLC as successor in interest to Crescent Communities LLC, Crescent, under a fee in lieu of tax and incentive agreement with York County, South Carolina, the county, and Black & Decker US, Inc., Black & Decker, dated as of December 4th, 2017, referred to as the FILO agreements. And 2, all of Crescent's right, title, and interest in the property to which the FILO agreement relates. 2, authorizing the county's execution and delivery of an agreement as to the assignment and assumption of FILO agreement in connection with such transfer and assignment. And 3, authorizing other matters relating thereto. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Committee and other reports, Honorable Chairwoman of the Zoning Committee, Allison Love.
So we met as a committee, and we had our guest was Robert Winkler. He attended also. We had quite a few other guests. We had a good group from the small builder and development community, and we just talked in general. Item 1 was the stormwater ordinance, and number 2 was a low-impact development ordinance discussion, to see how we could maybe have those two things work together in favor of some small builders and development, to put those guys back in business. I had a couple pictures that I wanted to show. The first one is the reason that we are really even discussing this. This is the first image here of property prior to being mass graded, and the second image is of the Bonham Road area, showing what it looks like after being mass graded. And so my concern and some of the concerns of the development community and the zoning committee is that whether or not we have to go to this extreme in development. So we've just kind of started a discussion on what it would look like if a developer was willing to do something that was low impact. I look at this and I say this is kind of high impact. So what could we offer those folks who are willing to leave some trees and maybe use a little bigger acreage and that sort of thing. So we're in the beginning discussions of that. We had asked for an update on the small area plan for District 5, Councilwoman Cox's area, and so I think soon we will be hearing. I think Planning and Zoning has made some headway on that, so we'll be. Aren't they doing a meeting for the public again, Christy, on that?
Yes, we're having one Thursday. Any folks that are able to come out between 5 and 8 at Castle Heights.
Yeah, so that'll be an update. There was a public not a public hearing, but a public meeting for input a few months back. So they've been working on that and are now ready to go back to the public to let everybody know where they are. And then we asked for kind of a timeline on District 3 and what Councilman Winkler was looking for his area. So that still remains to be seen exactly whether that will be a small area plan or a different form of a plan, but that is at least on the radar, and we know that something is coming on behalf of his constituents in District 3 also.
When did you say that wasn't in your district? Did you
Thursday.
say this Thursday?
Actually, is it Wednesday? Wednesday, it's Wednesday.
Wednesday. Castle Heights?
Wednesday at Castle Heights between 5 and 8. Yeah. Economic Development Committee, the Honorable Chairman, Robert Winkler, do we have a report?
Yes, and I apologize, I lost my connection to the internet there for a minute, so I'm gonna wing part of this, but we met on Tuesday, December 10th at 6 p.m. Committee members Cox and Hamilton both were there. And we opened the business and discussed the Economic Development Advisory Board and the fact that we had kind of stalled putting new members on that board for a little while we were talking about the possibility of a P3, but that it's time for us to look at that board and try to get that board back up and running now since the P3 did not go through and did not happen. We need to make sure we get that board with people seated for open positions and who's rotating off, and David Swinson is looking at that. He also gave us a quick update on the Economic Development Strategic Plan, and that is moving forward. It is funded. We'll be going through the county process for procurement to get some people to work at that, and still trying to work out exactly how many members will be on the, I guess we call it a working committee to figure out the scope of that strategic plan. But the big thing is it would be involving all areas of the county, public input and council input once that plan, strategic plan is awarded and they start working on it. And then we had one presentation from a solar project who's looking to come here in the York area off of Davinia Road. And we went into executive session after that, came out, and this is where I may need y'all's help a little bit. We did not take any position on Project New Cycle, but we did vote and so that would move to full council, I guess, without any recommendation from the committee at all. It would just come to full council in that case. We did vote, I believe, to approve or recommend Project 4003, the Project Don update, and Project Jet. We voted recommending those out of committee to come before full council. So one, we just recommended, we didn't take any action on it. It'll come to full council without our recommendation either way. The other three we recommended.
Was that the solar farm you didn't recommend? Is that what you?
That was just a public presentation. There was nothing discussed in executive session on it. But it will, we told them again, as we told a few others, that they need to come before full council for that recommendation. That's something that they're asking for, some pretty hefty tax incentives and stuff. And so that's not something that we, as we've done in the past, the last one that came and presented the full council in executive session. We told them we thought they should do the same.
You said Davinia Road was the solar farm? Where's Davinia Road?
The old high school here in York, the road that goes between the high school and Jefferson Elementary, that's Davinia Road.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Robert. I do think it'd probably be a good idea to go ahead and post and push on our website those openings for those board slots, to make sure that folks know that those are open and available to be applied for. Council member new non-agenda comments. Do we have any? Mr. Roddy.
I'd like to say, when we're considering next year's schedule, can we not have a construction update at the last meeting in December? I'm kind of concerned we got the financial update, because I'm sure we're not going to be processing this during the holidays, even though it some good information. I think just the timing, because I'm sitting here thinking about what I'm going to get my son for Christmas right now. But do want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. This is our last meeting. And someone told me they were looking forward to our ugly Christmas sweater and all that we did last year and had so much fun with. We'll get that back on the schedule for next year, because I think that was a lot of fun. I think people enjoy seeing council in a little more relaxed mode every once in a while. But Merry Christmas to everybody.
Any other comments? I think we do all as a council want to wish our constituents and all of our folks who serve the county happy holidays and a Merry Christmas. There is one thing that I would like to bring to council's attention, because this is something that has, I believe, decision-making has to happen rather quickly. The incentive program that we adopted, the volunteer incentive program for the firefighters, I just became aware of this, and apparently it's because the information about this just came about. But basically, when we adopted that program, I don't think any of us up here understood or knew that what was being proposed by the fire chiefs would end up resulting in the volunteers losing their tax credit that they qualify for. Basically, if you're assigned a dollar of funds at all, typically this was done, that was deferred comp, essentially, that was a retirement benefit, but now this money is being considered for that incentive program, and what it ends up doing is resulting in a number of folks, they have to evaluate their own personal circumstance to determine whether or not that credit is of value. So I think that's just one thing that I think that as I understand it, the fire departments are making a recommendation and working with staff on, but it may require something that we do, because that decision has to be made very quickly before, as I understand it, maybe before our next meeting. So I'll just let you be aware of that. As I understand it, we don't have any citizen concerns. Do I have a motion for executive session?
Yes, move we go into executive session for contractual matter on 529 South Cherry Road building, receipt of legal advice in the Blue Granite rate case, contractual matter involving Project Avalanche, and receipt of legal advice and conflict waiver request.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. We will move into executive session immediately.
How does that get handed, executive session?